want to discuss the situation that went on. I already played this clip posted. I decided I wanted to do more of a breakdown of what happened, but I also want to, because I'm hearing the feedback on excuses like that, and I just want to um, preface that I'm not an expert, but I want to explain some things in the video. So I'm going to play the video first. Um, then I'm going to play it again and give some commentary on it. So let's start by playing the video.
Hey, sit down. Sit down. What are you coming up here to do? You want to come take over the service? Huh?
Over the service.
What do you want? What?
I just want a prayer, Ed.
Get out of here.
Can I get a little grace?
No, you can't. No,
breaking
you
the law
get
right
out
now
of
by
here.
stopping
Get
this
him out of here. Drag this bozo out. Pull him out. Hey, help him out. Get him out. And you know what? Anybody wants to come up here and take over the service? We'll throw you out of here, buddy. This church is not a free-for-all. This isn't an open mic. This isn't a karaoke bar. Okay? I'm the man of God here. I meet the qualifications. I run this church. And if you don't like it, then get out. This is not some church where every first-time visitor and brand-new believer and people who've never even read the Bible are going to come up and take over the service. Not happening. Okay? If you want that kind of watered-down leadership, go to some house church with your Amish buddies and sit around the coffee table with your coffee clutch. This is a New Testament church. We have a bishop here. We have an overseer here. Like it or lump it. And if you don't like it, feel free to get up and leave the service at any time. Or 50% of people walk out. I don't care. Because you know what? I'm not going to pastor a oneness cult. Amen. I'm not going to pastor a Pentecostal church. I'm the pastor of a Baptist church. Amen. And if you're not a Baptist, then get out. Amen. Hey, sit down. Sit down. What do you...
So, stop that loop for a second. First of all, churches, we live in a day, and this is not, I should say, this is not history. This has happened before. We are currently in a society that respect of other humanity at an all-time low. That's a whole nother subject. What I want to discuss is the church setting here. It's very important that a church is able to defend and protect it from physical bodily harm and interruptions of service. I have no problem if somebody came in and interrupted a service. I have absolutely no problem whatsoever of that interruption being stopped in a correct, loving manner. If life is endangered, then even if you need to take the life out of that individual who's trying to take other lives, do it with prejudice. Seen it before. That guy walked in with a gun. They should have dropped him dead, and they would have been absolutely valid doing so. That's not the issue here. And there have been individuals bringing up, well, they got to be able to defend themselves. I want you to watch that and realize it's okay to stop the threat. I'm not talking about the self-defense side here. And I'm not an expert in self-defense, and that's a whole nother ball game. And that's not my place. I'm just saying I would respect any church that needs to defend itself. Just recently in a church, it was all over the internet. A kid got out of jail, walked into the service, and just starts laying it into the youth pastor, punching him. The youth pastor jumped up and goes into a defense stance and starts fighting back. Okay? The pastor handled it very well. Come to find out that this kid is struggling from drug addiction. There's some serious issues here. And they actually are helping this kid, and they are not pressing charges, and they're loving on him, and they're going to get this kid the help he needs. Now, that church handled things very well. Honestly, I think I'm surprised there wasn't a security team that was able to quickly react, and I hope that church gets a security team quickly. Every church has to have a security team, and security team should be in the front, the back, and they should be armed, and they should be ready to defend and protect the lives of those around them. That's life. That's the day we live in. And if a church thinks that they don't need to protect themselves and be pacifists, they're frankly idiots. My opinion. Only in my opinion. That's not the discussion here. The discussion here is what happened. Now, Steve Anderson is new IFB. Steve Anderson is a wicked, evil dictator. He is a monster. His children are becoming monsters. The new IFB is anti-Jew, anti-Semitic. They're very anti-Jew. They're racists. Steve Anderson is the one that has said sodomites only deserve death. And when there was that mass shooting against all those sodomites, he was like, hey, that's, whatever it was, 30 or 40. That's 40 more that we don't have to worry about. He is a very wicked man. Old IFB wasn't conservative enough for him. Steve Anderson has become a new Jim Jones, a new cult leader, and he's very dangerous. Very dangerous man. And what's scary is how many people are following him, which is even scarier. He's like Westboro Baptist. The guy's nuts. And the stories that will eventually come out of abuse and people destroyed, and I'll guarantee you there's going to be sexual perversion coming out. There's already some stuff that come out with his own children. It's going to be absolutely, I'm putting this on record, it's going to be heartbreaking, and I hate it, but it's going to happen because history always, because we're entity. Learn from history. So, I know Steve Anderson's a nut job. I'm making that clear. Now that I've said that, this video is vindication. Because what he did in this video, I witnessed myself on numerous occasions, and pastors and evangelists would use sermon illustrations bragging about moments like this. Like when a Mormon came in. I know in one missionary, a Mormon came into his church, and he bragged about how he just screamed and ranted at him and had him physically thrown out of the building. And JWs have done this too, where they've gone in and tried to interrupt the service. Mormons and JWs have were actually, for a period of time, were trained to go in and interrupt Baptist services and try to question the pastor. What I'm trying to tell you is the behavior seen in this video is actually way more accurate and way more the norm than people outside the IFB, the Independent Fundamental Baptist Movement, even are aware of. I know Steve Anderson is new Independent Fundamental Baptist, and the old school, the old order, Independent Fundamental Baptist, IFB, would decry him and say he's a fool. But what happened in this video is actually not uncommon. I saw it when I was a young person. I witnessed it in myself growing up in the IFB, 40 years in the IFB, and I was actually one of those security guards. So let's play the clip again, and then we'll pause it as we
Coming
go.
up here to do? You want to come take over the service? Huh?
All right. So the first thing he does is he confronts the guy with antagonism instead of decency. He confronts the guy, clearly stands up and starts walking toward the pulpit. Comes about out of the back there. And Steve Anderson, the first thing he does is he doesn't say, okay, security, can we check on this or anything? He instantly, and with an antagonism, comes at the guy, both guns blazing. What do you want to do? Take over my service? Now, I believe that could have been handled way better, and I believe the security team, if they're doing their job, should have jumped up immediately, and he should have said, security's going to take care of this. Let's find out what's going on. Let's be loving, but let's not allow any distractions that are dangerous or whatever. The whole thing was handled wrong from the get-go, even though they had every right to stop the guy. And he could have pulled out a gun. Okay, let's be honest. I'm not covering that part. I'm not a safety expert. Making that very clear. I want you to hear the tone. and the antagonism in Steve Anderson and understand that this is the norm in these IFB churches. This is not uncommon. I don't know what else to say.
What do you want? What?
I just want a prayer read.
Get out of here.
Can I get a little grace?
So the guy says, I just want a prayer read. He pushes the guy back, pushes his prayer back, and whatever the guy had in his hand, says, get out of here.
No, you can't. No, you get out of here. Get him out of here.
Get him out of here. No, you can't. Now, you see the guys that are popping up in their suits and sunglasses. I used to be one of those people. Now, I guarantee you, every one of those guys are armed. So I do appreciate the restraint. I guarantee you that every single one of those guys that jumped up was carrying, and probably legally carrying. And I'm okay with that. They had every right to do so. And I don't know if it's legal how they grabbed him, and that's where I would love to see a legal expert and explain, was it legal what they did there and actually physically assaulting him? Because he did not actually show any physical aggression. He actually, they physically attacked him, and he did not physically attack them. So I'm not sure the legalities there. I'd love to see an expert explain. So I'm looking at the screen here. So if my eyes look place, I'm looking at the screen here, and I noticed how they jumped up and get him out of here. And the first thought that came to my mind was Donald Trump. Get him out of here. Knock him down. Beat him up while you're getting him out. And remember that Donald Trump doing that during his campaigns? One reason why he was so attractive to the independent fundamental movement and the evangelical Christianity, and they voted for him and by the tens of thousands, is because that bully mentality, that power struggle, the ass mentality was already there. And he actually was very attractive to them because that's how they've been all along. And they haven't been loving, and they haven't been the Beatitudes, and they haven't shown the fruit of the Spirit. And to my shame, I used to be one of those asses. I used to be one of the kids, the guys in the suit. And if the pastor would have said, punch him on the way out, I would have. I blindly followed whatever the pastor said to do.
Drag this bozo out.
Drag this bozo out. Don't even need a comment. Just
Pull him out. Hey, help him out. Get him out. And you know what?
And then they started getting carried away, and someone says, let him walk, let him walk. Somebody pulled out a cell phone and added a video here, and they physically, I don't know. I wonder if that guy could press charges. I don't know. He did interrupt their service. It was a private get-together, so I don't know how that works, but the borderline behavior there. What we're coming to is what I really wanted to say. That is what Steve Anderson said after the fact. So remember, I'm in full agreement that he needed to be stopped in a proper manner. More than likely, this gentleman is probably suffering from a mental illness because normal people don't do what he did. And or he was somebody that was trying to create a scene to get videoed because he knew what Steve Anderson would do. Who knows? They had every right to stop the situation, the proper manner within legalities. I am discussing what happened after the fact. Let's listen to Steve Anderson because this is what I want you to hear. This is what needs to be discussed, and this is common. This is what I was raised under, sitting in the living room with these pastors that would sit with Dad. If CPS ever comes to my door, I got my guns locked and loaded. That's the life I grew up under, and I heard that over and over and over.
Anybody wants to come up here and take over the service? We'll throw you out of here, buddy. This church is not a free-for-all. This isn't an open mic. This isn't a karaoke bar.
Church is not a karaoke bar. All right, listen. I'm not even sure where to go with this. Let's just keep going. Let me just keep playing it.
Okay? I'm the man of God here. I meet the qualifications.
I'm the man of God here. That's what I wanted to hear. The MOG, man of God. That is ingrained into your mind. Now, I want you to look at that video if you could, please. And you see the children, all the babies there and the children there. This is the type of church I grew up in. They don't have nurseries in this type of churches. They're actually against nurseries. And if you look there, there is even a chair. You can see it's one of those glider rockers next to a chair. So it's probably a nurse mother. So this is the type of church very similar to what I grew up in. I look at it and I see so many similarities to what I was raised in. This is the kind of pastor, the Reeves guy that we just posted recently. Preacher Boys Doc has been revealing how bad he is. This is the type of church that I was raised and knew 100%. It's actually a lot smaller than they realize, but they think that they're like God's gift to the world. And they becomes a remnant mentality, and they believe they're it. But what he said is, I am the man of God. These preachers in these churches, and this is not just Independent Fundamental Baptist, but I observed this when I was in a Southern Baptist church. These guys get power trips. They get glory trips. And they truly believe that they have divine authority over your life. And it gets to their head. And I'm realizing more and more that there's very few actual good preachers out there. But again, I digress. The whole church setting is wrong in the first place. You don't see the church setting we have in our day anywhere in the New Testament. Anywhere. But that's a whole nother story. I'm the man of God. I'm the man of God.
I run this church, and if you don't like it, then get out.
I run this church. If you don't like it, get out. Now, to my shame, I still fight that in my own life because that carries over into the homes. And these fathers hear the man of God talk like this. These men hear the supposed, I'm going to put supposed in quotation marks, man of God talk like this. And then that gets carried into the home. And this is how the men talk to their wives. This is how the men talk to their children. And I, a recovering, abusive, misogynistic jackass, used to talk just like that to I used to talk just like that to my children. Oh, you don't like it? This is my house. I'm the money bearer of this home. You're the stay-at-home wife. Get out if you don't like it. I'm in charge. So that's what I'm trying to explain to you. And I know this is a massive trigger for a lot of people. And I've already had people contact me about this video because it's very triggering because it's reminding them of the whole culture. It's an entire culture that is ingrained and embedded into the misogyny of men. And it's a part of that coercive manipulation of the people under them. And it's just a domino effect. And so I'm the man of God. I'm in charge. You don't like it. Get out. I've said that to them. I've had to make that right. Now knows I don't talk that way. So this helps you understand when my father looked at me, I looked at him when I was about 17 years of age. And I remember looking at my father and saying, Dad, Mom is absolutely a monster out of control. And she was. And I remember going to my father and saying, Dad, Mom is literally just tearing people to shreds on a daily basis. She tears you to shreds on it. And it's gotten so bad that there's just, that this home isn't even safe anymore. I was like 17 when I told my dad this in the kitchen. I'll never stand. And Dad was taking his vitamins. I'm coming to me as I'm talking to you. And Dad said, I know Mom's out of control. I'll never forget this conversation. I know Mom's out of control, but you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I'm in charge. This is my house. And if you don't like it, you get out. Because I am in charge. You see that mentality carried over And and that's how Dad was from the pulpit. I'm in charge. I'm the man of God. So you weren't allowed to question authority, even if you tried to do it properly. And you would try to come to the man of God, the pastor, the shepherd. If you tried to come to these guys, even with somebody else with you, and you try to approach them about a problem in the church, they will run you out. They'll destroy you. They'll name you from the pulpit and they'll destroy you. They'll tear you to shreds because they're the man of God. And this is why there's so much cover up of sexual, physical, mental, and spiritual abuse in these churches that trickles down from the pastor to the assistant pastor to the deacons and into the men, into their homes, and into the teenage boys who are abusing girls around them, because it starts with the man of God that they're calling. These guys are brutal. And it's all about power and control. Let's continue.
This is not some church where every first-time visitor and brand new believer and people who've never even read the Bible are going to come up and take over the service. Not happening. Okay? If you want that kind of watered-down leadership, go to some house church with your Amish buddies and sit around the coffee table with your...
One of the things that I witnessed growing up was the constant mocking of other, like the Amish or the house churches. Now, the Amish, by the way, it's so ironic and funny. Overall, there's multiple variations of Amish. Okay, the Amish overall, with their belief system, are actually very much the same. Literally exactly the same as Independent Fundamental Baptist, with a different twist, with a little different slant. But the misogyny, the fear, the sexual abuse, incest, you name it, is rampant in the Amish circle. But some Amish have actually started to come out of it, and then there's also now what's called Charity Fellowship out of Pennsylvania. They've been going on for years now, but they're actually former Amish, and they are still plain clothes, and they're very Arminian in their belief system. And you actually have to announce you're an Arminian member of the system. You have to denounce Calvinism and say, I am Arminian, blah, blah, blah. But the same teaching, the same mentality is what happens. And they mock the other group. And so what he's mocking here is actually common. This is like normal service. This isn't just some exception to the rule. You can go have your home perch. You can go have your coffee table. I thought it was just an IFB until I started going to a church and realized this is a problem going on there. It's an elitism in evangelical Christianity. And I've been talking to victims coming out of other groups, Missionary Baptist, Primitive Baptist, Independent Fundamental Baptist, Southern Baptist. This is actually way more common than anybody wants to realize. It's elitism, pride, it's arrogancy, and then they mock the other party and belittle them and tear them to shreds. It's coercive manipulation.
Coffee Klatch. This is a New Testament church. We have a bishop here. We have an overseer here. Like it or lump it. And if you don't like it, feel free to get up and leave the service at any time. Or 50% of people walk out. I don't care. Because you know what? I'm not going to pastor a oneness cult. Amen. I'm not.
Now, this is where there's some differences between, for instance, the Southern Baptist Church I was at and the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. And this is where I'll try to quickly digress too long. The Independent Fundamental Baptist Church, if they lose half the church, and then they will proclaim they're martyrs, and they're financially going to go under because they can't afford to pay the bills because they took a stand for Christ and they're the remnant. You're going to hear all the time, we're the remnant. We are the chosen few. Does that sound like a cult? Yeah, it is a cult. And that is a common denominator in these egotistical jackass preachers that use they're not even men of God. They're not. I don't even know if they're qualified to be pastors. I don't believe any of these guys are, but that's my personal opinion, and that's between them and God. But from what I can see, and after growing up my whole life and dealing with hundreds of these pastors, and I mean hundreds and hundreds, this is all I knew. I have been in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of churches being a missionary kid. and traveling around with my dad, and I've sat at the table of these pastors, and I've heard the way they've talked, and I've heard the way they've talked about people in their church. These guys, it's a badge of honor to run people out. It's a badge of honor to lose a tither. I'm not joking. It's like, yeah, we're struggling because we had to run some rebels out, and they're not tithing anymore. I mean, it's a badge of complete honor to run these guys out. Now, in the Southern Baptist Church that I attended, the pastor blew my mind the way he talked, and he was afraid to lose all that money. So he chose to use manipulation and mind control. But every once in a while, he slipped only to the inner circle, and he slipped and he would say things, I'm the man of God, I'm the pastor, and I'm in charge, and I'm the one that makes the decisions, nobody else. This is my ship. I'm the captain of the ship, nobody else. And they get very, very power hungry, and they get very demanding, but they only do it with inner circle. They'll never will do it from the pulpit like this IFB guy did. Now, in the IFB, like I said, I know this is new IFB, know all that, but this kind of outburst from the pulpit is not uncommon. And they'll name names from the pulpit. Even the what they would call a liberal IFB church that I attended here in Fort Wayne, New Heights Baptist, that pastor has become, he's more like a middle of the road. He's like between IFB and New IFB. He's like in the middle. But even then, when it gets down to it, he'll do the same thing, and he'll start naming names, and he'll start tearing people apart from the pulpit when he needs to knock things down and get it where he's back under control. That's not uncommon, and he does it in a very vicious way. Then he'll come back, and what he'll do, that middle of the road kind of guy, and I've watched this over and over again, and then they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry, and then they'll cry, and then the next 3 months of messages will be all huggy bear, I love you, I love, Barney songs. And because he brings them back in. So that's another mind game. It's another form of manipulation. And so it's still coercive manipulation, but in a different way. But it's still the same end game, the same end result of getting people to do whatever they want, that man of God wants you to do, and to continue to control your life. It's all mind games, and they just do it in different ways. It's all different psychological approach, but it's a psychological game. It's a psychological warfare going on with these guys, and it's all about control, power, and money when it gets down to it. And he literally would welcome, if people would have walked out, let's say somebody else would have gotten up and walked out of the service, he literally would have spent the next 10 minutes going on how, and then he probably would, oh yeah, that was John. Now that you mentioned it, John came to me for counseling back in the day, and this is what happened. I remember when a church I left, I'll never forget this. It was the church my first wife and I, Dan Hafley's church. He publicly took, I remember this now, we had been involved intimately before we got married, and we confessed it because we were in that purity culture. And we confessed to him about us being very sexually active before we got married, and private counseling. After we left, a part of because when we left, it was a big uproar. And after we left, one of the things he did, and I got to wrap this up. I didn't realize it's all been 30 minutes. After we left, he named us from the pulpit and revealed those private, intimate counseling sessions and called my ex-wife a harlot and a whore from the pulpit and destroyed her from the pulpit as a means of control to keep the other people in the church. This is not uncommon. I could just keep going, but I got to end this.
I'm not a pastor of a Pentecostal church. I'm the pastor of a Baptist church. And if you're not a Baptist, then get out. Amen.
If you're not a Baptist, then get out. And that, folks, is what I want you to understand. That is the theme. They believe in the Baptist movement. And I'm realizing it's not just the Independent Fundamental Baptists. It's the Baptist movement as a whole. They believe they are the only ones, and that they are the only true church. And if you're not a Baptist, get out. Christ is not in these churches. Christ hasn't been in these churches. They're all just little mini cults with very brutal dictators for leaders. And it's religious abuse. I'm telling you, during lives, homes,